Junji Ito is an instantly recognizable name in the mangaka scene, even specifically in the horror scene. His first series is the perfect starting point, Tomi, about a beautiful but almost mentally vampiric woman. In it, we see the start of an incredibly unique style. He goes for a realism, but not through detail so much as focus on figure and line art. His characters are detailed where it counts. For one, his proportions are perfect, with the eyes of his characters really grounding his stories in the real world. His backgrounds are similar. There really isn't anything untoward about it, and that contrast that hits when the supernatural makes its appearance hits all the stronger because of it. His line art is smooth, but done in such a way that his characters actually take on a bit of a scared appearance themselves. The lack of any effects on human skin, and then those well-defined eyes, or that coloured-in hair, ends up making the characters look pale and shaken. His work looks better in black and white than it does in colour, that's for sure. I could talk about Soichi or Gyo or Uzumaki, but my favourite stuff from Ito has to be his literary adaptations. No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai and Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. His adaptations are so well made and drawn. Frankenstein in particular is that early Ito where the lines are thicker and drawn in ink pretty early on in his career. It's the perfect gothic adaptation for a really sad but haunting tale. The monster in Frankenstein is such a well-drawn, gross-out kind of monster, from the crusted eyes to the spaced-out teeth, but the story also retains that sense of humanity and existentialism that Mary Shelley's novel had, and Ito manages to convey it all like a folklore tale with this manga. The Viz signature edition of this manga is also packed with other stories that he wrote around this time, and that's a perfect segue to be honest, because he doesn't release like a typical mangaka either. He kind of interestingly escapes the whole being owned by a corporation and having complete subservience to them, and has actually kind of accomplished the traditional life of an artist. He doesn't publish for any specific magazine or publisher, he instead sells different works to different places and often just submits his entries into competitions around Japan. A lot of the time grouping a collection of stories together and selling that to a publisher as a single manga book for them to own, and him to get an advance and royalties from. This way he has evaded any one ownership of his work being umbrellaed, and instead maintains a reputation that rises above that, and is uniquely identifiable by fans of himself alone as an artist, separate from that of any one piece of his work. Looking at his Oshikiri tales from this era, we can see how he uses a scratchiness to his benefit. Sometimes the anatomy isn't all there, and sometimes the details can be a bit lacking, hidden behind the hatching, but at the same time it does work to build that creepiness. In fact, there really weren't many effects overlaid on the manga back then. Even the hatched shadows are the result of just ink and ruler. Screen tones are rare. Ito simply goes the route of ink everywhere. He makes the scenes dark, the characters pale, and he keeps it that way. The realism and shape of things coming together is shown really well by even just the thumbnail. And also this mock thumbnail that I came up with a while back. Not as eye-catching, but in terms of a spooky face, he's definitely upped his game. His most famous work though is probably Uzumaki, his most definitive dive into the world of cosmic body horror. Years and years ago, they announced an anime for it which has still yet to release. They even came out with the smallest of small trailers to tide us over, and it literally amounted to like the first 6 seconds of the first episode. If it beats the collection anime, then I'm all for it. There are people out there who've covered it far better than I ever could, but you really don't need to look too deep into the footage of this anime than to see that it doesn't capture anything from the pages that you can see here. And in fairness, whilst we wait for the Uzumaki anime to come out, Ito is still working and still releasing at the age of 60. The Liminal Zone is a book I recently picked up, and those stories were ones he made for the Line manga app. In the afterword, he mentions about how he loves this type of storytelling because he isn't constricted by page amounts and is at the point that he's telling the stories the way that he's always wanted to be able to tell them. That he struggled in the past with page limits and even altered and changed endings that didn't fit within that constraint. Though in fairness, maybe that limitation helped at times. Stories like The Hell of the Doll Funeral are helped by the fact that without really any context, we're stuck in a little room and see an ordinary family fall apart in a matter of 6 pages as a girl slowly turns into a doll. In the Liminal Zone, he's kind of gone the Stephen King route, where things always seem to have a more comical side nowadays, and no matter how spooky he tries to write, a funny pun is only a panel away. Creators tend to mellow out a little as the need to make a name for themselves subsides. His line work has really thinned and defined with both characters and backgrounds, changing into a different style of horror. That old textual look that his early stories had was for a different type of horror than that which he makes today. His recent work is far more focused on straight-up entertainment than gross-out or disturbing imagery. I think that's a good evolution to have. It's easy to have a preference of scary and darker being better, but when books like The Liminal Zone read as well as they do, it's hard to complain. Ironically though, The Liminal Zone doesn't actually have any focus on liminal spaces or even feature it once. It's such a shame. And with his track record for adapting things, could you imagine his take on House of Leaves or even The Backrooms? That would be phenomenal. There is a slightly lesser known adaptation of one of his works, an OVA film which adapts Gyo, a manga about mutant fish who've grown legs, running around killing people. It's another one that unfortunately didn't capture the horror of the manga, and I mean, even just looking at the art style of some of these pages, like they didn't even try to mimic Ito's style. Why wouldn't they even try? This OVA also changes the point of view character, inserts new scenes, and has a bit of a prevalence for being a dodgy kind of production, if you know what I mean. More recently, there was actually a further look into the Uzumaki anime, and it's nice to see that it's not vapormation like the last video I made, and is actually progressing along. I guess the cost of fully mimicking a style like this is an indefinite wait time. But it definitely looks to be worth waiting for, as it's adapting a story which squarely sits between the likes of his older and more newer work, with clean lines and backgrounds, and a more depraved boatload of ink saved for the most horrific pages. There's little behavioral details that are really innocuous but add a real charm to the characters that makes me think that this could be incredible if it's given this kind of attention throughout. And maybe it could open up the chance for more Ito work to get adapted. Maybe in a few years' time, when a few more stories have come out, we can get a Liminal Zone TV show. Either way, it says a lot about your skills as an artist when it takes the dream team to accurately portray it, and studio after studio fail to meet the mark. In terms of artwork developing and crafting a unique persona for your life as an artist, it doesn't get much better than Junji Ito.